You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio. So, hi everyone, Harsha here, aka DJ Harsh, and thank you guys so much for tuning in to another awesome episode of Changing Reality. So, for all of you out there in our lovely audience that doesn't know what Changing Reality is, Changing Reality is a show that features phenomenal people from all walks of life, whether they're anywhere around the world or alumni from here on the Penn campus. And the idea behind this show is that we get to hang out with some of these amazing change makers, entrepreneurs, business owners, to even artists, musicians, and inspiring executives, individuals from different parts of the globe. So, through listening to their inspiring stories and how they are changing their reality in the lives that they live, hopefully we'll all be inspired to change the world around us too in the things that we love doing. And I wanted to do this show personally, simply because I feel like there are so many people out there who do phenomenal things and have stories to share about how the world around us works without us even knowing. And I'm super passionate about uncovering those stories and bringing those experiences to everyone here at Penn and also around the globe, so that we can all find a way that we can make changes, that we can actually use our strengths in our own capacity to create a better world. So personally, I founded and run a youth movement called Ascendance in Malaysia, which is where I'm from, that collaborates with the Malaysian Ministry of Education to provide an alternative education platform for any student who wants to change their reality. So we work with students from elementary all the way up to high school through various sessions, programs, projects, experiential learning activities that help students discover what they're passionate about, learn about themselves and learn about it from world-class leaders all across the globe, and start their own careers in it that creates meaningful impact for not just themselves, but those around them too. So to date, we've worked with very recently close to 10,000 students in over 270 communities, and have incubated countless number of student-run projects, careers, and even social enterprises run by students aged 8 to 20 years old. So in a way, I've always been passionate about helping people create their own reality. And I hope that sessions like this today get to inspire you to do the same. So do drop any questions that you'd have below in the chat, and we'll answer it in our next session as well. So today we'll be speaking to another lovely alumni from here at the Penn campus, Cecilia Leung, who is the Global Partnership Lead at Amazon Business Payments. So now let's invite Cecilia onto our digital stage so that we can hear a little bit more about her story and how she's done the amazing things she's done today.
Hello.
Hi, hello. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me onto your show.
All right, it's really, really exciting having you here. And as I said, you were actually a student at Penn as well. So other than knowing all of the secrets that Penn students do and being connected to that hive mind of information that we all share, I'd say, I thought we could just open up by asking you, why did you choose to Penn in a sense? Like, why did you choose to go to Penn in a way?
I was a student at Penn, oh my goodness, many years ago. I'm almost embarrassed to say how long it was ago. But the reason I chose to go to Penn that many years ago was I was very intent on actually being a psychologist when I grew up in life. Clearly, that is not what happened. But back then, and I'm sure as it is now, Penn has one of the best psychology departments in the world, if not the best in the world. And so when I kind of selected the different options that I had, it was really looking at a very specific major that I had in mind and going for, where the best professors are, where I see people kind of writing the textbooks. And Penn was it. So, I was very excited to join the Penn community, but that was the background as how I got there.
All right, very cool. And I agree completely with the whole psychology angle and things like that. I study positive psychology, so it's like, and I was really shocked when I got there and I saw like, the person who wrote this textbook, like their bio says that they're from Penn. This is so weird. So yeah, it's been quite the experience in a sense. And you are obviously really, really good at psychology in a sense. I think you co-authored a journal article, and
Yes.
you also graduated magna cum laude from Penn. So wow, congrats. Was it like why did you want to be a like a psychology student in the first place, and how did that kind of like make you such an amazing student in a way?
So I had always had an interest in just kind of human behavior and what makes people tick. Honestly, going into psychology, I don't know that I knew exactly what I was getting into. And I think a lot of students are like this, right? You think that you know what you're studying, you think that you know what you're getting into, but it wasn't, the reality wasn't, exactly what you expect it to be. And I think when I got to campus, like I really was thinking I wanted to be, a therapist. That was really my going in premise was to really help people through therapy and really helping people with their mental health. And being there and really studying the theories and the techniques, it was a lot more overwhelming, let's be real, than I thought it was going to be. A lot more responsibility than I thought, it was going to be coming in as an innocent high schooler. And so I think I did learn a lot from a lot of the professors that I had interacted with. I really kind of pivoted to be more interested in the social psychology side of things, which is where the paper came in, as well as the study of intercultural psychology, because being as somebody from Asia, living in there, you're from Malaysia. I'm actually, from Hong Kong. I've lived in many different countries in Asia. I've lived in Taiwan for a while, and then being in the US, and just kind of coming face to face with a lot of the realities of how people are different just because of their cultural and sociological backgrounds. It was just a topic that really fascinated me as I spent more time in it. And so that's kind of what led to the paper being published. I worked with a professor who was studying this and kind of helped him develop the topic, ran the experiments. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it ended up being a great learning experience, a lot of fun. And I think really in a way changed the direction of where I ended up going with my career and what I decided to do after graduation.
Cool, very cool. So, what was your frame of mind stepping out after graduation, looking for like applying for jobs or maybe getting jobs offers being chased after you in a sense? I don't know, but like I read somewhere that you pivoted into the marketing and advertising field. So, is
Mm-hmm.
that something that you planned, or was it something like it just came upon you in a sense?
That was something that I planned. So I did, I have a major in communications as well. So I did major in psychology, but I also majored in communications. And I will be honest, it was largely due to the Annenberg campus or the building being as attractive as it is. It sounds so shallow,
All right.
but I did take a couple of classes, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is very interesting, and look at how awesome this place is. And so again, maybe nowadays it's not as central a location, but it was back in the day. And again, not to make it sound even more shallow, but no, it was I think I was first attracted because of the topic. It took up a couple of classes. It was very interesting. And when I graduated with a double major in psychology and in communications, it was kind of like where would be a good fit, and advertising, was a good fit. I think you never know what and I just to skip forward a couple of years, we can always go back in the next question, but I kind of feel like you never know where you would end up in life or in your career, but in the short term, that made a lot of sense for me as a next step. And when I knew what my next step was, I usually try to go and get it. And so I had really targeted psychology advertising as a career once I decided that I'm not cut out to be a therapist. And I spent my internships actually also in advertising over summers. And when I graduated, I actually, I wrote letters. People don't do that anymore. I wrote letters to all of the, major advertising agencies in New York City. And, a couple of them called me back. Not a lot of them did, but a couple of them did. And I got interviews the traditional way. Again, back in the day when you wrote letters and actually stuck them in the mail, people called me back and I got interviews and I ended up at DDB, which, was a great place to start.
Okay, very cool. And I think you were an account executive at DDB,
Mm-hmm.
and from what I've heard, you were there managing a lot of really cool brands, in a sense, from ExxonMobil,
Yeah.
Bentley, like those are like,
Michelin. Yeah.
oh, Michelin. Oops, sorry.
No,
And
it's okay.
no, and they're just so cool. So it's like, for someone who again, you're new to this in a way, and you come in and you've got all these big brands and things like that. How do you really start learning the ropes and things like that? I doubt there's a manual that says like branding for ExxonMobil and things just like that. So like, where did you start in a way learning or grasping all of this?
It was a lot of the people that were there. So I did have a manager who I worked with very, very closely. There was a lot of coaching involved. I think the positive thing about starting in advertising is that there is a pretty structured hierarchy and a career path for people in the company. And within the account executive team, you started off as an assistant account executive, and you had a mentor or manager who was an account executive, and they, sit you down, teach you the ropes, have you do competitive research to start off. I almost feel like that's kind of the key to all beginners is a lot of competitive research, a lot of news articles, like things that you can do just not knowing anything, like a lot of research-based things. And then as you sit in on meetings and listen in to discussions, I think that's just really how you pick things up and almost like go with the flow. But it's a very good training ground, I would say, just partially because of the structure of the teams there, having that kind of step-by-step process that's very clearly laid out career path. The other thing is I had to work with a lot of really difficult people. Like, so now I look back, I realize that because you deal with a lot of very creative people in advertising. Literally, they're called creatives. And, the people who art directors and, literally they're called creatives. And they have very strong personalities and opinions. And when they create something, that's like their baby. And you have to learn how to work with them and bring them towards a different opinion potentially, because you have customers, clients who have different opinions, but not hurt their feelings, and get that buy-in. It was I think a very, very useful skill to have learned that early in a career, that I feel like really helped me moving forward into the future as well. So plus you got to, go on TV shoots and photo shoots and sit in production rooms and do editing studios and sit there all day and sit in focus groups behind those one-way mirrors. Like all of those things were just so fascinating. It was a lot to learn, but it was also just very, very exciting to be part of that world.
Yep, and I really love like a few of the points you brought up, especially working with creative people. That's something that I feel at times I struggle with at times as well. It's like bringing everyone to a shared vision, and it's something that I'm learning how to do. So, how did you learn how to like work with people with different personalities? Because I'm sure, like in your position, you've got on one side all of these very creative people who can come up with brilliant ideas, and then you've got like the deliverables and the clients that you've got to deal with and things like that. So, how did you bring or like at least the creative people to like the place that you wanted them to, or the space that you wanted them to create in? And like even if if we have to skip a little in your story, tell us what's your secret in it, in a sense.
I mean, I think a lot of it is understanding where they're coming from, having a lot of open dialogue and conversation, and trying to get to a place where you can mutually agree on a way forward. Because like I said, like a lot of the creative folks, their creations are their babies, and it's very hard to criticize somebody's baby. You can't, you can't be like, no, you got an ugly baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot of it is just saying, making sure that you understand their perspective, keep that in mind, stand up for them. Not necessarily all the way to the end, but like stand up for them publicly. So I actually distinctly remember this as one of the I would say semi-defining turning point moments as somebody who's really new, was not sure what I was doing, but then observing enough to know that it's important to kind of stand up for your creative person. And being in a conference call with a customer, with a client, and with a creative lead, and being like, no, I really believe that this is the right thing. Like that gained so much respect that even you having a few, times when you're pushing back, obviously pushing back constructively to someone who's even a customer, like that really helps solidifies, the trust and earn their respect. And then, once they believe you, once they know that you've got their back, I think the rest of the relationship flows a lot more smoothly. I think as somebody who's young, relatively new in their career, it's very easy to capitulate to pressure from a customer, especially. And just being like, yes, okay, but I think, being able to have, a little backbone, I'd say, and push back, was really, I think really earned their trust. So that would be one kind of simple pointer that I would bring.
No, that just shows like, I mean, how much people probably love you, because that's such a good way of like working with someone. And I feel like many times when we've got this whole problem solvers versus creative people kind of debate, it becomes like, how do we get them to think like us? But I like the stand that you take, which is literally stand up for them and be there for them, which again, I think that just shows how good of a leader you are, in a sense. So how did you grow from there? You were managing all these people, all these really cool brands, and I've got to ask, did you ever get a brand and then just like take a few minutes to go like, oh my god, this is so cool, and things like that? So how did you grow from there, in a sense?
I mean, they were all cool. It was everything was very cool. I mean, I think going from Michelin, I remember I worked at, again, this ancient history for most of you guys, but like when I worked at Michelin, they had the Firestone Recall. And that was when, so again, ancient history, I can see on the face. What happened was the tire treads started coming off of a lot of Firestone tires, and SUVs were like tipping over while people were driving. And so there was a big kind of hoopla as to, tire safety. All of a sudden, everyone was very concerned, and we had all these like crisis management type discussions, because we were on a competitive brand, but it was kind of like, how do you just reassure people that tires are safe in general. Um, and the brand, so Michelin decided to re-up on their commitment to safety. There was always because so much was riding on your tires, I still remember, was their tagline. And it was all about like, children are in the car with you. And then the whole idea of like, like your babies are in the car with you, and you need to be safe. That was the big idea. And so it was a crisis management moment to come up with a very simple image and headline that reminded people of kind of the legacy of safety that Michelin always had, without being too explicitly like, our these other people are not safe, like let's not go there, but being able to reinforce that, they had, baby and tires, just kind of, again, very simple message to take advantage, but to really, like heighten the awareness of safety in the moment. And it was just, again, like an amazing experience to be part of that fire drill, of like how do you take a crisis scenario and turn it into a positive. But it was great. It was a lot of good learning. Like I said, everything was cool. Some of the coolest experience were actually brands that we may or may not have gotten, working on like new product or new brand pitches. I mean, those are like overnights, like nobody slept type exercises. Like you would like literally be in the office overnight, going, working on a pitch. But just the energy of that, right? Like being part of a team that's so mentally focused on one thing, one day, one presentation, and everyone pitches in and just nonstop around the clock getting something in. It was a lot of excitement. It was a lot of adrenaline, but it was also a lot of fun.
What was the thing that was most unexpected for you in this whole field, in a sense? Because you worked at many of, I think, some of the top marketing and advertising companies out there. So what made you go like, I never thought of this before?
Yeah. So I think from a marketing perspective, I think people think of a lot of the glitz. Like I talked about it, right? Like the shoots and the movie stars, and which I never saw a movie star. But but I think just being in that world is very exciting. But I think what people don't recognize is all the just hard work and sometimes very tedious things that go into it, right? So that I appreciate, like really now, even like for the rest of my career, like that actually is the majority of what you do, is like little things to move projects forward. So for example, every piece of advertising goes through a legal review, right? Where every word is picked over, make sure that there's no overpromise, make sure that everything is accurate, make sure you have claims to back up every claim that you make, like, you have evidence to back up every claim that you make. And all these things I don't know that the viewers appreciate how much goes into it. But every moment, every word, every color, like so much discussion, just, should it be blue or red? Like, should the emphasis be on, like lights, or should the emphasis be on, like, I don't know, dark, like it's like there's such a like so much work goes into everything that we see, that I think I did not have an appreciation of that. And I think now I have an even greater appreciation of that, just having been through so many different companies and in different positions. whether it's in marketing or what I'm doing right now, which is a little less marketing and more business development, or in the middle where I did product management or business management, like all that stuff. Like I think what people don't appreciate and kind of sitting in college you don't see is all the little things, everyday mundane things that go into something being successful. Whether it's a piece of advertising or whether it's a product that you see launched, or like there's a lot of hours of little teeny things that kind of go into that may or may not be super exciting, but like things that need to be done.
No, I completely agree. And I mean, like, I remember when I first started Ascendance, my social enterprise, and we had to like take care of every font and every alignment in a sense. And after that, whenever I went like to a restaurant and I saw like a word was off in their menu, I was just like, whoever spent their sleepless nights on this, I'm so sorry that like, and it's like because it's like there is a lot of work in that, and it is really awesome that you acknowledge that. And from your journey, I think again you went around in so many of the top firms and things like that. But I think you eventually became a manager of strategy and enablement at Digitas North America. Is that right?
Yeah, that was brief. That was actually an internship. So yeah. So I went to business school, not at Penn. I went to Columbia.
But okay.
I missed Penn, but I ended up going to Columbia. And one of my internships was manager of strategy and enablement at Digitas. It was short, but again, it was very strategy focused, and I think there was a time when I thought I wanted to be a consultant. Digitas seemed like a good creative way to do that, right? So it's not a traditional strategy consulting role. It was a little bit on the, closer to where I'm used to, like, on the advertising side, but also, in a consulting manner, consulting engagement type of interaction with your customers. So I wanted to try it. So I did, and I think it was. Again, all experiences are good learning experiences, but it was interesting to learn about how people thought about the brand in a different way than, in advertising, you're so focused on executing because there's so much to execute to get done. And within that strategy world, it was more like, let's think about the big picture. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at, what is the recommended next step? Let's look at the whole brand, not just a piece of it. And so having that experience was actually very, very cool as well, and definitely helped inform kind of future endeavors. And I still remember my customer there was American Express. And now I work with them quite extensively, but like, who would have known? Who would have known like back when that like this like the world kind of just comes around.
All right. That's very cool, and we will definitely speak about that later. But so you had kind of like this turning point where you did your MBA, and then you kind of went into a little bit more managerial roles, and you went into City, which is huge, and things like that. So first of all, what brought on wanting to try something a little bit different from what you were normally used to, in a sense? And how was it like in this whole world of like having completed your MBA, now entering a new company? How was that change like for you as well?
Yeah, I think I had gone to business school thinking that I wanted to be on the client side, and you'll hear. This is not clearly just the advertising focused radio show, but like in the advertising world, from what I remember, a lot of people say they want to go into the client side, right? Like a lot of it is I'm in the advertising side. I want to be on the branding side where I'm part of the company and I own the brand. And again, what you learn from experience is you don't know half of what these people were doing. You're on the advertising side thinking like, what do these people do? Like we're doing all their work for them. I know, like, well, what do they do? And what you realize is on the flip side is you don't know half of what they were doing, not even close. So if I had any advice for folks kind of moving into the job world, is like, don't assume you know what people are doing. People always have more on their plates than you might imagine. But yeah, so that was my reason for going to business school, was that I wanted to get into marketing. I wanted to be on the branding side. The reason I joined Citi was actually because they have, I think it wasn't just had, I think they still do. They have a management associates program for MBA graduates. And it's a formal training program for business school grads, and you get to rotate through a variety of different job functions there, and got special training because you're a graduate of one of the top business schools in the country. And that was like, versus going into I was looking at some CPGs as well, like the Colgates and the Unilevers of the world, where you would think somebody who is focused on marketing would want to go to, because it's kind of core marketing. But just from talking to recruiters on campus and having access to different companies and just having all that exposure, what I learned was that having that program and being able to rotate and gain all that experience, in the end, was more valuable to me. So that's kind of how I ended up at Citi. But I do think it's you feel pretty invincible coming out of MBA, and then reality quickly hits again. But it's funny because, like, I feel like seniors graduate from college thinking, the world is your oyster, and especially if you already have a job lined up and it's one that you wanted, you're like, okay, this is my ladder to success. I'm set. Or on the flip side, if you graduate without a job and you're kind of desperately looking, it feels kind of dismal. But if I had advice like this, it would be that everything is temporary. Like, this too shall pass, whether it's positive or negative. And don't assume that things are going to stay the same forever. Don't assume that the career that you pick now is going to stick with you forever. There are so many opportunities out there that you can take advantage of. And I think that's kind of where I went. And I started in the marketing space, which is where I did want to be when I graduated. But then, I ventured into analytics at Citi because I was able to. And I saw how important it was while I was there. Just how important financials are to a bank. You would imagine you would know that, but I think as it was a little less apparent, I suppose, than when you're there and every decision was made on a basis point. And so I stepped into an analytics role because I was able to with the rotational program. I actually had people telling me that I didn't need to do that, but I'm so grateful that I did. So and this is you'll encounter all sorts of people at work, and these are great managers. I'm not saying they're not. But they were like, no, like you can stay in marketing and just kind of dabble with the analytics side. You don't need to go into analytics. But I'm so glad that I did because it really honed my skills in forecasting and building P&Ls from the ground up, and it definitely served me well moving forward. And my last rotation at Citi, I don't know if it's okay for me to jump there. Did you want to talk about other stuff first? But okay.
What was the last one?
I know. My last rotation at Citi, it was 3 rotations, was actually with the international business. It was with international cards. And I tell this story to whether it's students or younger employees that I work with often. because there was no management associate in international cards. They didn't have a position open. There was nothing. But I was like, I want to do international. Like my background is international. I did this whole like cross-cultural. I know. I was like, I and Citi is such a global company. Like I went to a manager who used to be a management associate. He didn't have a position open. And I said, you should have a position open. I'm like, what? What's the deal with you not having a position? And he was like, wait, what? I didn't even know you guys were still doing this, And I'm like, yeah, we are. Like, I went, I did what people call I did an informational interview. And I said, I'm a management associate. I'm going into my next rotation. You don't have a position open. I don't know why, but I'm very interested. And what can we do? And he went and created the position. Went to HR and said, why aren't we part of this program? And created the position. And once the position was opened, there were other people interviewing for the role who was not me. And I'm like, come on. Come on. I made this happen. Don't come on. And obviously I did end up getting the role. And then from then on, they had plans for the management associates coming in for a while. I mean, obviously reorgs happen all the time and things change, but yeah, I mean, I think it was great having that experience. And I was kind of like, don't take no for an answer. Like just go and get it done. And it worked. So that's how I joined. I was in international cards. And when I graduated from the program, I ended up staying there because I was doing some really cool things there, and stayed there a couple of years with Citi as well. So it was great.
Yeah, and I think you went like really, really high in the organization. You were head of business collaboration for their global cards. You were their SVP for, I think, Citi Enterprise Payments. So you didn't just create your own position. You were just like, I'm just going to excel in everything that I do here, in a sense. How did you do that? How did you come into you are honestly like in the best ways a storm of awesomeness that I think took them by because you come in, you create your own position, and then you grow and you progress in the ladder of that company. This is very unlikely, and I feel like all of us would not even be able to imagine it if we weren't listening to you. So how did you even progress in your career in such a way that in, I would say, quite a short period of time, you did so much?
Yeah, that's very sweet of you to say. Head of business collaboration was a role that, again, we created for ourselves. So myself, there was a recognition of a need for better communications between the countries, right? So we're in international cards. People weren't talking to each other. And it was like, how do we share best practices? How do we make sure that people have a place to go if they're looking for information? And so, I created a program that we called, I think something 360. I don't even remember. But it's still long ago. Yeah, it was, and so it was, it was like a wiki, like things that you take for granted now. A SharePoint site, something that helped compile information, put together seminars and kind of global meetings that was focused around business best practices sharing, and then put that together, presented it, kind of kicked things off and got that to roll out. So that was exciting. And then the enterprise payments role still stands as the best kind of work experience I've had to date. It was phenomenal. And I go back and I did have a manager tell me, like, don't take this role because this team is new and it may not last. And and I always have, and I think maybe this is just either um, uh, I guess not recognizing reality or just being overconfident. I was like, I don't care. I'll find another job. Like I was like this. It sounds like fun. There are a lot of people there who are very influential, and there were a lot of managing directors in this team hiring a handful of people to join that group. Yes, it was potentially temporary, but a 2-year stint is actually a really good stint if it lasts that long, right? So again, just kind of going in with that mentality, like let's try something new. So we kind of founded that group, I would say, and Enterprise Payments was it was a team that kind of looked for new ways for payments to flow. And what we did was we bridged the city's consumer bank with city's institutional bank. So the bank that focuses on people on a day-to-day basis, as well as the bank that focuses on large enterprises, and how those payments kind of came together between these two parties, and how Citi could, in the middle, facilitate these payments transactions. Had a couple of key industries that we targeted. And I learned a completely new business while I was there, which ended up being, the most of my focus since then. But the merchant card acceptance side of the business, working on building a global platform for that. It was amazing. So, I mean, if there was a lesson to be learned from this, I would say don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid of uncertainty. And I think the how. I don't even know how. It just like step up to the plate, take risks, and then work hard. That was definitely something that came into play. It was a lot of, I still remember, long hours, but also don't doubt yourself. Like I think I can't speak for other people, but I was like probably the most junior person on that team. It was like a CEO and then a bunch of managing directors. And then there was like me and like, maybe 2 or 3 people who are the same level as I was. Working with people who like, the person I worked for used to like be the president of Charles Schwab. She was just amazing. And I learned so much, but like, it's kind of like take every opportunity. It's so easy to be intimidated by people like that. But when you step up to the plate and you can perform, with people who are so senior, and you can kind of help them because they're not into the details, right? At that level. If you're kind of like, don't shy away from that and step up to the plate and go like, I'll fill in all the gaps for you, right? Like I remember we had customer pitches, and because she was so senior, she's used to working with people who ran companies, like businesses, like, like she ran a company, and she had people who ran huge businesses reporting to her. And there was me, like a couple of years out of business school. But I would do everything and put all like the presentation materials together, and I would run up to the glass where she was on a different call, and like stick that paper in front of the glass and be like, you need to read this. We have a meeting in half an hour. Like I would like mouth it through like the glass, and she'd be like, okay, wait, and probably get it to her maybe 5 minutes before I sit down and go like, okay, this is what this is, this is what this is, this is what this is. And then she'll be like, okay, got it. And because she is as experienced as she is, she would just wing it, like, take everything, wing it, and it would be just perfect. So just, having exposure to people like that was just the best experience. Even though it was sometimes a mad scramble and it could have been stressful, I find it very exhilarating. And like I always say, like, no offense to all the other businesses that I've worked in, including Amazon. This was actually one of the best experiences. I mean, still stands as kind of the best career experience I've had. It was just so much fun.
I can imagine, and I'm just so amazed how at like every step you not only create your own career in this corporate world in a sense, but you also take on new things. You also aren't afraid to make that career work, and I guess that's like if you had like a room of corporate people who are thinking about doing things differently, who are thinking about trying to do what you do and like find a role for them that may not already exist, what would your advice be to them to not just create that role, but to make the role work in a sense?
Yeah, I would say fill any gap that needs to be filled. I think so. So people may or may not know, Amazon has 14 leadership principles, and if you ever interview at Amazon, it's very, very important to know the 14 leadership principles. But though people always ask, like, what is the leadership principle that resonates with you the most? And for me, it's ownership. Um, and like, to me, like, acting like the company is your company. And I kind of feel like I do this intuitively without really thinking about it, but I rarely say, this is not my job and I'm not going to do it. Right. So, and I think that's been very, very helpful in my career is it, I mean, a couple of things. It helps you learn new skills. So, we were building a business. We're building a platform at City, and I had very little technical background. But people were like, you need to write business requirements, and I'm like, okay, like, what? I don't how do I do that? And you find out how and you do it, and then eventually, I got enough momentum. Obviously, it wasn't just me. It was me and my manager, a small group of people. It got enough momentum that, like, okay, we need a business analyst to come in and actually write these business requirements in a way that makes sense to people besides yourselves, right? But dang, I tried, like, I did it, like, I went, I did it. I sat down, I wrote all this, like, pages and pages of stuff. And we had no finance person. We needed a business case. We needed a business case that spanned 4 different regions. Like, it was like 50 plus countries, 4 different regions. So, I was like, I can do a forecast. And anything I didn't know, I would call, my friends in the that I knew from the, my management associate days, and be like, what exactly does this, line item do? And, like, and how does this add, like, and just ask. But I think it was taking on the new role and then not being afraid to just step in and do whatever it is that's necessary to make it successful. And I think execution cannot be underestimated. I think strategy is one thing. Strategy is very important, but execution and, again, the grunt work. Being willing to go in and step by step write everything out, read a 300 plus page contract because you had to understand everything that was going on. Like willing to do all of that to ensure that something is successful. Again, it goes back to the ownership, goes back to, like, it doesn't matter whose job it is, let's just get it done. I think is very important.
And it's funny that you say this because I think your next role was actually chief of staff of global product and data solutions at
Yeah.
the street. So now you have like you go from like doing all of these many things to managing, I think, what, over 800 people on their day-to-day tasks and things like that. So that's a leap, isn't it? Like you doing the work, and then now you've got like 800 people doing the work. How did you make that leap and keep an eye on everyone? Like, I've got a team of like 30 people, and I'm still like, what are you doing at times and things like that. So how?
Yeah. Yeah. So a chief of staff role, again, it's very sweet of you to think, and you clearly, I think the 800 people was really, I kind of supported that person, not quite exactly in the role where I managed them directly. But the story behind that role is also still very interesting, in that a recruiter reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, DMB has a pricing role. Would you be interested? And my former manager at Citi, who I love, still do, she's, again, so good. And I've been very lucky to have some really just amazing managers in my life. She was like, if you're interested in the company, which I was interested sometimes because it was 15 minutes from my house. So, DMB is a company, is a respected, well established business. The Citi enterprise payments role that I was in, actually, we were shutting down the business. So that did happen. Exactly what was predicted did happen. It happened 3.5 years later, after some amazing, again, still the best experiences I've had so far. So no regrets there. They were shutting down, and I was, I mean, I was not asked to leave, but I was like in a position where I'm like, okay, well, let me look around, and I think that was the right thing to do. And so, I was like, hey, this sounds interesting, but I'm not that interested in pricing. That's not super fun to me. So I went and interviewed, and they came back and said, we don't think you're good for the pricing role, but we want you here,
Oh,
so we'll figure out what we're going to do with you. And so it took them a while, and they went and back, and they were like, oh, let's think of a role for her. And they created a chief of staff role, because they thought that was a better fit, and it was. I was like, so, again, advice would be, if you're interested in the company, like, just go for it. Like see what happens. And if I didn't have an amazing mentor who told me that, like just go and see what happens, I wouldn't have done it. But so they created the role, and in that role, I supported the chief product officer, and she was a direct manager of over 800. I supported her on a day-to-day basis, which included helping her manage the people, and so a lot of it was, when you're that senior, it's the folks that reported to you were also very, very self-sufficient, right? And I think just being able to sit in those discussions at that the most senior level, where people were talking about their teams of couples of hundreds all over the world, how they're managing them. I wouldn't say I was giving them advice. I was really more learning from them and making sure that if there were any urgent matters, that they got to the right people. Connecting the dots, making sure that, like, my direct manager, who was the chief product manager, was aware of any kinks in the system. I also did initiate some programs myself. So we worked on building an innovation I wouldn't say incubator, but kind of like an incubator, right? So like a path for innovation to happen within the company and how to bring that together. Went through kind of design, thinking, training to bring that to folks, and establish a more formalized project. We kicked off. I don't know that it really launched. I left before all of that happened, but we kicked off a program to bring really strong female leaderships, and think about like women in leadership opportunities for DMB. So there was a lot that happened in the short time that I was there, whether it was just kind of sitting with the manager and helping her coordinate and manage her team, or building some new initiatives for the business. It was a great experience, and I think the one thing that I still remember was I put together the board decks. So the presentation for the board of directors, and like so formal, right? Like the exact layout, and again, the language had to be vetted by legal before it went out. But then interacting with the board of directors and having a seat at the table with like people who have so much experience, talking about kind of the life and death of a company, more life, not death, but just it was something that, as somebody who's, I would still count as relatively new in working, like compared to everybody else there. It was a really good experience to have. So yeah.
You are so humble. I'm just saying, you're like senior VP here, chief of staff there, but you're still so humble and kind, and like, oh, they've got more experience than me. And that's very admirable. And I think that we should all strive to be as humbled and kind of like as willing to learn as you are, which I've heard is a complaint among college students who are not even a fraction near as successful as you. So, thank you. And today you have this global role at Amazon. So, first of all, other than knowing the 11 pillars of Amazon's leadership theory and things like that, how did you actually come to this role? And because the way I look at it, it's almost as if everything that you've done, even since the time you're in Penn, has kind of like connected in some way or another. So, how did all of these experiences kind of like come together in your role today in global partnerships? Because it's kind of like down your alley in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. So I spent 3.5 years at TD Bank. I was tapped to take that role by my former manager at Citi, who, like I said, I love. She's still there, and managed had a team, grew a team, managed a big group of people, took on more and more responsibility there, really managed the business. And after a while, I don't think this is a secret, but the tech companies are really doing more and more. I mean, a company like Amazon does like everything. so that's, it's like, it is what it is. But like, I think at a bank, some of the thought was, really the technology is taking over. And how do you be part of that transformation? So I often feel like I kind of drift from role to role. But then if I take a step back and I look, I'm like, no, actually, I tried really hard to get certain places. I'm like, I just take advantage of opportunities. But no, really, like I think I joined Amazon because I wanted to get into tech. So it was less Amazon specific, but more I wanted to make the leap from financial services, where I've been my whole life, into technology, because I see that's where the future is, and I think it's important to be part of the future, at least learn it, and then see where it goes from there. So I actually called a lot of friends. I mean, that's a lesson again for college students out there. don't burn any bridges. You never know what's going to happen. And then keep your relationships positive always, because I called a lot of people, at Google, at Amazon, at Facebook, at LinkedIn, etc. And I was just like, like, tell me what you're doing. Like, tell me what's there, what's exciting. And it was great. It was, like, just to get that background. And then when I called my buddy at Amazon, he was like, "Are you looking?" And I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, "Okay, hold on." And he literally pulled up the job search website, because Amazon is hiring like crazy. It was then, it still is. And he's like, "Oh, this is a good role. Let me like refer you to this role." So like live, he referred me to like a number of roles. And I ended up at AWS. And AWS was not at all what I thought it was, because I knew nothing. It was not at all what I thought it was. But it was, I mean, I don't think I learned so much since college. Just everything was different. Every interaction, everything was new. But it was a great experience where I worked on, because I have a payments background. I worked on helping them with customers who are payments companies, and putting together the right partnership pitches, and how do we bring different relationships to AWS? How do you resonate with customers in that space? So it worked. But this role within business payments, kind of popped up in my feed. So within Amazon, there's like there's a page that shows relevant potential positions. Just it used to be like the homepage, and kind of based on where you sit and your level, it would just show you like, here's new opportunities. Yeah, it popped up in my feed. And so this happened again, because there was an operations role in business payments, and I was like, well, I know business payments. Like, that sounds fun. Like I was like, that's like my wheelhouse. And even though there was nothing wrong, I mean, AWS was just an exhilarating experience, but like, I was like, I want to get more into core payments, because it was more of a sales type role, core infrastructure, but like sales type role. So I was like, I want to get back into where payments is kind of like my day-to-day bread and butter. And it was a business operations role. And I reached out to the manager of that role, and I said, like, I saw this role, I thought it was interesting. Here's my background. Here's my, credentials. Here's why I want to move. And she's like, yeah, I don't think you're right for this role, but I know somebody who would love to have you. And so, she told me to reach out to somebody else, who I did. And I talked to him, and he's like, you need to talk to my manager. I talked to his manager, and he's like, yeah, that original role is way too junior for you. Like, you need to come work for me. And I'm like, okay. Like, I was like, oh, sure. Like that's great. And so here I am. But so, again, I don't, I feel like things just kind of land. But they don't. They, you do have to point yourself in the right direction, to make sure that you're in the right place when those doors open, right? It's not that everything goes exactly the way you wish, because sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen. But I feel like I positioned myself, so that if the opportunity comes, I was ready to really take advantage of it. And I think that's what happened with Amazon Business Payments. And so now I'm back, like, working much more on like core business work, core payments work, focusing on credit cards, once again, launching new programs. Launching new programs at Amazon is an amazing thing. I was actually given the opportunity to lead a team. The question was, do you want to lead a team or do you want to do something, that's like innovative? And I was like, innovative all the way. I was like, no, there's no, to be able to do something different at Amazon is something that you really got to go through and do. So it was, I think I made the right choice. And so, I think that's, I'm glad I am where I am, and and being able to do, again, like really cool new things with a really amazing company.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And there's so much more that I think we've just scratched the surface to your story. But final question for our interview today. Everyone, I would say, would want to have this amazing career. They want everything to make sense in their life. I think that's what all of us want. We want to be able to take a job and learn something and bring it to the next thing, but we at the same time have no idea what the future holds for us. Like everything in your career seems very connected, but how do you know this? Do you have a crystal ball that tells you at home like what's the future going to hold, or are you as clueless as the rest of us? And if so, what's your advice for all of us who are looking forward into this world of uncertainty and are planning where we're going to go? How do we get ready for these opportunities that we don't even know are there yet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely as clueless as everyone. I
So
so
then I
I remember, like, somebody I worked with at Citibank who went on to be an entrepreneur. He's like just scary smart. Used to like read like entrepreneurial like new business law books in the elevator, and I'm just like, yeah. Like I used to be like, dude, I have no idea what I'm doing with myself. And this guy is like reading law books on like how to start a new business because he's so certain about his vision. So I would say if you think you're clueless, that's okay. Because I think we all think we're clueless.
Oh, you're
Um,
okay.
I had no idea. And I went through a lot of iterations of what I thought I wanted and what I ended up finding out I wanted. My daughter says this to me all the time. When I grow up, I want to be, an animator at Disney. And I'm like, you have no idea, the amount of work that goes into that. And you have no idea what else there might be, because I've been there, right? Like I thought this is exactly what I wanted. I thought I wanted psychology. I didn't. It really, I thought I wanted advertising, and no, really, like I thought I wanted marketing, and I found product management a lot more enriching, and then business management even more exciting. P&L management as like like ultimately like what I like the most. And then now I'm in business development, which is really much more sales. Like so, like I think I would say I did not know, obviously, what would happen if you haven't figured that out yet. You haven't been listening. No idea. I think I just made, as I said, I made it so that I was in the right place when the opportunity comes. And I think, you can go into any career that you want to, just with like a thread of the connection to before. So I know you said that there seemed to be like a thread that connects everything. There is. I mean, there's industry, there's like background that kind of connects all the different pieces. But I think there isn't really a limit as to what you can do, because your skill sets could be taken and applied to everything else. I actually had a very recent conversation with somebody who's very experienced in working. And she was like, do I make the leap to tech now, or do I stay in financial services? And then am I stuck forever if I stay in financial services? And I was like, no, I don't see this as a turning point. Like do what you want, like, and make sure you enjoy it. and your skill sets can take you wherever it is that you want to go. There's always a way to take those skills and apply it to different industries, different backgrounds, etc. So I don't think you need a crystal ball. Let's just say that. I don't think that's necessary. I think it is important at some point to know what it is that you want, and focus on that. Be rather broad with what it is that you want. Like if you want something very specific, it might be a lot harder to get there. But if you're broad and open to different opportunities that kind of get you, like small steps forward, I think that will eventually help get you to where you think you want to be. And along the way, you might find out that's not actually where you wanted to go in the first place, and you decide to pivot, which is fine because now you know more and you want something different. And don't forget, family. Everyone they're all, you're all students. Most of the people who are listening to this or watching this, I'm guessing. But like I always tell people I work with now, like I'm a mom first for beyond all of this stuff, right? Like I'm mother to my kids first. Everything else comes second. And honestly, like if you can't, like appreciate that, I don't want to work with you anyway. So make sure that you know your priorities. It is important, and it's easy to get lost. But I think be willing to take risks and be open to opportunities would be kind of my parting thought for this conversation.
Oh, that's amazing, and your daughter is very lucky to have all of your wisdom to hear upon and look upon as she grows up. And thank you for sharing a little bit of that wisdom with all of us here today. It's been amazing having you on the show. Thank you once again. And to all of you watching, I hope you learned as much as I did.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, thank you all for tuning in for today's episode of Changing Reality. We're on every Thursday night at 10 p.m. EST and whatever time that is in your time zone as well. So see you guys again next week. And thank you once again to our lovely speaker. Bye.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.